Very good evening, students. Good evening, Jyoti, Aishwarya, Ram, Kavita. Good evening, students. This would be the session which we are dedicating to the practice questions in respect of the supply chapter. Naveen, good evening. In respect of the supply chapter, the basic and the supply together, one of the very important topic, which as far as your examinations are concerned, as I told you last time also, that the most important challenge the students face in this topic is to reason out their answers. See, not all the topics, the approach of every topic, students, is different. The approach which I'm going to take in this topic would be quite different from the approach which might I take in the subsequent topic. And you yourself will come to know. Each topic has a strategy. Here, the strategy in this topic lies on the fact that how do you write the answers? That happens to be the core strategy as far as the topic is concerned. If you can write it properly, the answers, you will definitely will make a very lasting impression or the mark in the mind of the examiner. Because here lies the case wherein he finds series after series of the answer sheet wherein he doesn't find the answers dealt in the appropriate manner, even if the final answer is right. The absence of proper reasons in the answer is what ultimately backfires to the ultimate scoring which the students get in this particular IDT paper. So that is one of the major thrust, students, which I'm going to put up in this particular session as far as the topic is concerned. Again, I just want to quickly remind to all of you that this is a practice batch which is in English. A Hindi practice batch, we do it in the morning at 7:30 a.m. Those who want to join this practice batch, there is a particular number given to you in the description box. You can just text that particular number and you will be added to the Telegram channel wherein you find the link and the PDF files of this particular practice batch. Now, students, therefore, let's begin with this particular part. The question which I'm going to deal, the first very question, there would be an MCQ or so in this context. Let's first discuss on that particular MCQ part, and thereafter I come down to this particular aspect of the Q&A. So, students, you find Tulsi. Good evening. In your PDF file, students. The solution has also already been given in the MCQ, so we can wrap up the things very quickly. But majorly, instead of hitting on the right answer, we need to also focus upon the incorrect answer as well. So the first MCQ which is there in front of you, which is about which of the following transactions do not qualify as a supply under the GST law. So obviously, they are hitting the section number 7 in this context, isn't it? Number 7 is that what they are trying to target it. Disposal of car without consideration and the supplier has not claimed input tax credit on such car. Be careful. Without consideration means 7(1)(c) read with schedule number 1. 7(1)(c) read with schedule number 1. And in that, the first entry, when there is a permanent disposal or transfer of a business asset without any consideration, then that transfer would be considered as a supply, provided the the registered person should have taken the ITC in respect of such business asset. In respect of such business asset, that is the criteria. Whereas in this case, point number A, he has not taken the ITC on that business asset, and therefore we will safely conclude that this is not a case of a supply. No supply, Jyoti. Let's quickly run through B, C, and D as well, students. B part, a principal makes supplies to his agent who is also registered under GST and is situated within the same state, and the invoice for further supply is issued by the agent in his name. So this is already a supply under 7(1)(c), wherein the further supply which is done by the agent in his name makes the previous supply between the principal and the agent fall within the scope of 7(1)(c) read with schedule number 1. The further supply made by the agent to the customer in his name makes the previous supply. What is the previous supply? The supply between the principal to the agent. That will be considered as a supply under section 7(1)(c) because the agent is doing the further supply in his name. That qualifies the previous supply, therefore, between the principal to the agent, that transfer, therefore, would be considered as a supply under 7(1)(c) read with schedule number 1. Is that point clear to all of you? So this is a supply. Point number C, head office makes a supply of service to its own branch outside the state, deemed distinct person. So accordingly, again a supply under 7(1)(c). D, a person imports service without consideration for the purpose of his business from his elder son living outside India. So is the elder son related party? He is a related party. And if he is a related person, in that case, from a related person, if you are importing a service without a consideration, and obviously that import you did for the purpose of your business, then is it a supply under 7(1)(c)? Answer is if the son would not have been a related person, then supposingly in this case they would have said brother, and that brother is not dependent on this importer, the importer brother. So the brother living outside India is not dependent upon this importer brother. So in that case, that the two person, though they are brother, but they are not related person then, because parents, grandparents, brother and sister would be considered as a related person only if they are wholly or mainly dependent on this registered person. And if they are not wholly or mainly dependent, then they are not a related person. And if they are not a related person, and if I'm importing the service from an unrelated person without a consideration, then even if that import of service was towards my business, it will not be considered as a supply. It will not be considered as a supply, students. Is that point clear to all of you? So I'm just taking you through all this last revision, because thereafter, student, there is no such point. There is no second chance to deal in this topic. This topic becomes quite difficult topic after 25 days. I'm telling you, students, mark my words, because then you will search for the reasons, although you may know the final answer. So every effort, every particular step which I'm taking through these lectures, please do take a serious note on the same, because that is what ultimately will matter to you in as far as your examinations and your final revisions are concerned. Point number 2, where any agent supplies goods on behalf of his principal, such agent shall be. Now this is quite a new thing, students. There is a different provision, students. So on behalf of principal, this particular point, although it is not a part and parcel of this particular discussion that we had, but I'll just tell you that if an agent is the person who is supplying on behalf of the principal, then so far as the GST's liability is concerned, both the agent as well as the principal, both the agent as well as the principal, both of them are liable towards that GST payment. Both of them are liable. That is the law under the GST. In fact, the same law is also there under the income tax law. In income tax law also, an agent of a non-resident, the agent is responsible for the liability, and also the non-resident. Both of them are liable under the income tax law as well. And that is the point which is there. So what is the position under the income tax law? Though in the income tax law, the agent is discussed with the reference of non-resident. So in the income tax law, in this context, the agent as well as the non-resident, both of them are liable for the income tax, which is liable for the income tax arising out of the income of the non-resident, which is deemed to accrue rise in India. Both of them are liable, agent as well as non-resident. Here also, the principal and the agent, both of them are liable for the GST liability. In this case, for the supply between whom? Between the principal and the agent in this context. In this regard, students, if you see over here, point number C is the answer. What is point number C? Both A and B. That is Agent as well as principal, both of them are liable. So that is the point. Position which is equally important under the income tax law, the same is the position which is there in the GST law as well. So this is something which is an add-on point which you just need to take a call on. Come to point number 3, students. Which of the following is not considered as a supply under the CGST Act 2017? Importation of architectural service for 21 lakhs for construction of residential property used for personal purpose from unrelated person. So students, this is about the construction of, so you are taking architect service for a consideration. So does it qualify under section 71A itself? Answer is yes. So this is supply for consideration. All form of supply for a consideration, student. In that case, will hit 71A. So it's a supply. Point number B. Sorry, importation of service, students. This is 71B. Sorry. This point number A, students, is 71B. Importation of service for consideration. Now, whether this is for personal purpose, students, this is for personal purpose or it is for the purpose of business, does it matter for 71B? Students, please tell me, for 71B, does it matter whether the service, import of the service which I have obtained, is it for my personal purpose or is it for my business purpose? Does it matter as far as 71B is concerned? Answer is no, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to 71C, in that case, import of service without consideration, that should be for the purpose of business. That 7-month C import of service should be for the purpose of business. So this for the purpose of business is not necessary to be for identified as far as 7(1)(b) is concerned, and therefore even if they are telling you that this is for personal purpose from unrelated person, in that situation, students, doesn't matter, 7(1)(b) is a supply under 7(1)(b). I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Point number B, importation of architectural service free of cost for construction of office used for business purpose from a related person. Importation of architectural service free of cost for construction of office used for business purpose from related person. Already I have answered to all of you this point. Point number B, I already answered you. No? What was that? 7(1)(c), import of service without consideration for the purpose of business. Now this import should be from whom? From the related person. This import should be from related person so as to qualify as supply under 7(1)(c), read with schedule number 1. Accordingly, this is also supply. Point number C, students. Yes, students. Importation of architectural service free of cost for construction of office used for business purpose from unrelated person. So from unrelated person, 7(1)(c) not applicable. 7(1)(b) also is not applicable because 7(1)(b) requires payment of consideration, which is not the case, and hence it is neither supply under 7(1)(b) or a supply under 7(1)(c). Is that point clear to all of you? So C is the answer, students. In this case, C is what would be the answer in this regard. Now, students, over here, if you see in this particular context, this is a case of, students, point number 1 and this one. This is a composite and mixed supply. Students, let me very quickly run through this concept now. Composite and mixed supply. Just very quickly, students, you will take a note of this particular part because many questions which they are targeting is from this concept. Which concept? The concept of composite and mixed supply. So accordingly, students, I'll just very quickly run through this particular concept for all of you because so that it will help us to solve the necessary questions on the same. Students, what exactly is this particular concept which you all are aware, but let's try to quickly recap, and if possible you can just try to take a note of that as well. Students, this is about the case when there is a bundling of supply, when the supply is bundled. So once there is a bundling of what? Bundling of supply. Bundle means combination. So this is nothing but the combination. Combination of what? Combination in this context, students, is of what? So the combination, as you can see, the bundle of supply. Herein, the category, don't use the word mixed, Jyoti, right now. This would be something is not appropriate at this stage. So what is the category? Bundle could be of students of goods to goods. Only goods are bundled. Bundling students could also be of only of services. Or bundling students in that case could be of what? Both goods as well as services. It could be for both goods as well as services. So if it is only goods to goods, if it is only goods to service, you don't have any issue. You will refer section number 8 to get your final answer. Hold on. If you are referring only goods to goods or bundle of 2 or 3 different types of goods together, or bundling of 2 or 3 different types of service together, you will refer only section number 8 to get your answer. But if you are bundling both the goods as well as services, if you are bundling both the goods as well as services, students, in that particular case, you have to be careful in this regard. And what exactly it is? Now, there would be a case of deemed treatment. There would be a deemed treatment of a particular supply. Deemed treatment of a particular supply. Yes, Jyoti. Of a particular supply. Yes, you have given the example, but where the example should fit in, that is important in this context. So, what is this deemed treatment of a particular supply? And as you know, there are schedule number 2, students. Schedule number 2 provides some category of deemed treatment of a particular supply. The example is restaurant. First example is a restaurant or catering service. Restaurant or catering service. If you see the restaurant and catering service, students, you will find that this is a case of goods plus services. Goods plus service. So didn't I said here both? Didn't I said over here both? If it is that particular combination which is there, so in this regard, students, this is about the deemed category. So what is the deemed treatment, students, over here? The deemed supply. The deemed supply would be a supply of services. So this is a supply of service. That is what it is. So it would be considered a supply of service, not a supply of goods. Second is the case of works contract. Works contract. Works contract, obviously the construction work on a property, primarily wherein both the material as well as the labor is used. Both the material as well as the labor is used. So again, this is a case of goods plus services. So is it a case of a supply of service? Is it a case of a supply of service? And the answer is yes. So that is a situation when the bundling is of both goods as well as the service. So what is the first step that you have to do? Check out if that bundle qualifies for Schedule 2 treatment, which is the case if it is a restaurant or catering service, or if it is a works contract. Because in this two combination, both the goods as well as the services are being used and they are bundled together. In which particular case, the deemed supply as per schedule number 2 for both the scenario is the supply of service, not the supply of goods. Now coming to the second particular point, students, second particular point. Now what is the second point? Other cases. For all the other cases other than these two, you will refer the test which has been given to you in section number 8. Section number 8, you can say, applies if it is, students, section number 8 applies if it is what? A bundle of goods with goods, or bundle of service with service, or bundle of goods and service other than what? Other than works contract service or restaurant service or catering service. Is that point clear to all of you, students? All of you are clear with this one? So this is how the things has to be looked upon in this regard. So now we have to handle this section number 8 now. The section number 8, students, as you would know, there are two clauses, clause A and clause B. Now in this particular context, students, how do you handle section number 8? You have to take two steps, students, step 1 and step 2. Now in the case of step 1, students, first check out if it is a composite supply. If it is a composite supply, students. So how do you know what is composite supply, students? In this regard, if it is a composite supply, composite supply has the following feature. Aishwarya, Jyoti, composite supply, students, has a following feature. So in this particular context, students, it is, first of all, it is naturally bundled. Naturally bundled means this is how in the market these products are naturally bundled together. Many example will come, don't worry. So they are naturally bundled, plus naturally bundling of what? Of the taxable supply. This is very important. Naturally bundling of what? Of a taxable supply. Primarily. And in that naturally bundling of the taxable supply, students, what is the scenario? One is the principal supply. One is the principal supply, students. One has to be a principal supply. That is what it is in this regard. So therefore, naturally bundle of taxable supply in which one happens to be a principal supply. If all this combination, students, is there, then such supply would be referred as, such supply would be identified with what? Uh, Such supply, students, will then be identified with what? Then such supply would be identified with, indeed, supply of principal supply. Supply of a principal supply. So a mobile phone with, say, the other accessories which are supplied with the mobile phone, so they are naturally bundled, and the one is the principal supply, which is the mobile phone. So therefore, in that case, it's the case of goods plus goods, in which there is an accessories and then there is a mobile phone principal supply. Both of them happen to be a taxable supply in that context. And that being the situation, the identification of this bundle would be with what? It is would be considered as a supply of the principal supply. And accordingly, whatever is the rate of GST applicable to the principal supply will be applicable on this particular composite. But if it is not a composite supply, how do you say that it is not a composite supply? This equation, one of the point in this equation is breached. One of the point in this equation is breached. So if one of the point, students, in this equation is breached, the equation which I have referred about, then you go to the second step. And what is the second step, students, in this case? If it is a mixed supply. Again, I'm repeating, friends. How do you identify it as a mixed supply? How do I identify that this is a mixed supply? You identify that this is a mixed supply if one of the condition of the composite supply is breached. That is where you will land up to be considered as a case of a mixed supply. That is where you will land up to be considered as a case for a mixed supply. So if it is a mixed supply, students, now what is mixed supply in this context? Be careful. This is a combination of supply. So it is not a composite supply. First of all, not a composite supply. That is the first one. Not a composite supply. So what it is? It is a combination of supply. Either goods to goods or service to service or goods plus service, as the case may be. So it is a combination of supply. Yes, Ram. In this context. And therefore, in this situation, the supply category, what is the category, students, of this combination? The categorization would be with that supply which attracts which attract what? Which attracts the highest rate of duty, the highest rate of tax, the highest rate of tax. Is that point clear to all of you? Now, students, tell me one thing. Now, a particular restaurant is providing, say, beer or wine along with some snacks. You find that they give a combo offer, and generally now that is a kind of a trend. There is a combo offer which is applicable, and this is something which goes without saying. So therefore, it is like a beer or a wine along with the some snacks. A combo offer is what is is there in almost now in every restaurant. So if there is a combo offer, because they feel that when the people are having wine or beer, they do want some sort of a snacks at that stage. So therefore, the combo is what is being made as a bundle, which is of beer as well as of that particular the other item. Now you tell me in this, and say for example this is a naturally bundled. Yes, say for example friends, this is a naturally bundled. Now you tell me in this case, will it be considered as a case of a composite supply, or it will be considered as a case of a mixed supply? A composite supply, or it will be considered as a case of a mixed supply? What it would be referred as? Quickly students, will it be considered as a case of a composite or a mixed supply students? Ashwarya, Jyoti. Indeed, because the supply of alcoholic liquor is not a taxable supply, and therefore that condition of composite supply has been breached. And because that condition of the composite supply has been breached, therefore it will fall under the category of mixed supply. And if it is a case of a mixed supply, in that situation, whatever is the highest rate of GST which is applicable, obviously the rate of GST would be on that snacks item, because there is no rate of GST so far as alcoholic liquor for human consumption is concerned. So that is the reason why on that particular tax item, whatever is the applicable rate, that applicable rate only would be made applicable. Now there is one question students which is there. I'm just doing it at, at the very outset with all of you. Supposingly, there is a question which is already there in your this Q&A segment in your study material also. A ground floor and the first floor, both of them has been let out. The ground floor and the first floor, both of them has been let out for a composite rent of rupees 1 lakh. For a composite rent of rupees 1 lakh. Okay. So the agreement was for both. Individually, that person doesn't want to give this particular things on rent. Now, ground floor students was meant for, because ground floor was a shop kind of an area. First floor was a residential dwelling unit to be used as a residence. First floor was a residential dwelling unit to be used as a residence, whereas ground floor was like a commercial shop. Now, in that situation, in that particular situation, you need to tell me in this context, is it a case of is it a case of a composite supply or a mixed supply? First of all, in this case, are they taxable supply students? Are they both taxable supply? Just answer me this point first. Or you need to think about it. That is very critical. Are they a taxable supply in this regard? And the answer to that, students, is yes. It is a taxable supply. Why? Because both the residential dwelling unit as well as the renting of commercial shop, both of them attract the levy of GST. And if they attract the charge or the levy of GST, they become a taxable supply. But subsequently what students? Subsequently, you do know that a let out of a residential dwelling unit to be used as a residence, that let out is exempt. That let out is exempt. So in that case also, it is still a case of a taxable supply, because we have seen in our earlier session the definition of taxable supply. So that continues to be a case of a taxable supply. That is point number one. Now the question, however, it is, but are they naturally bundled? And the answer is no. This is not a case of a natural bundling. To provide both the floors primarily together, wherein one is commercial and the other floor which has been given on rent is a residential dwelling unit. So that is not a case of a naturally bundled. Even if it is naturally bundled, one cannot say one is principal out of the two. One cannot say that one is principal out of the two. That cannot be distinguished. That is the reason why the test of composite supply fails, and therefore you go to the second step, which is about the mixed supply. And this is about the combination of supply. Now, in that case, it will attract the highest rate of tax, which you all know. The residential dwelling unit to be used as residence, it is exempt, so no tax on that. But on the commercial shop, On that, whatever is the rent, on that there is a rate of GST. So now what happens? This mixed supply, which is a combination of the ground floor and the first floor, this mixed supply together will attract the rate of GST applicable to the letting out of the commercial unit, which is the shop. So for the entire rent of rupees 1 lakh, you will be subject to the GST as applicable to letting out of the commercial shop. Is that point clear to all of you? Every one of you in this context? One more example, students, I'll let you know. Now you just give me the answer. Now, in the case of students healthcare service, be careful. Here, let me give a reverse example now. In the case of a healthcare service student, you do know that obviously medicines are also being provided. While there is a healthcare service, the hospital also will provide you with medicines. So medicines are goods, healthcare service are a service. They are bundled. So it's goods plus service. Are they naturally bundled? Are they naturally bundled? Answer is yes. In the healthcare service, this particular supply of medicine is naturally bundled. Are they are is the supply is that of a taxable supply of medicine and the supply of the the healthcare service, both are subject to the charge of GST. Both are subject to the charge of GST. However, we do know that there is an exemption which is given to the healthcare service. But are they subject to the charge of GST? And the answer is yes. And if they are subject to the charge of GST, in that particular case, students, are they a taxable supply? And the answer is yes. So naturally bundled and taxable supply, the two conditions are satisfied. What is the third condition? One is the principal supply. Now, out of the two, the healthcare service is the principal in that scenario. So if healthcare services principal, so the entire supply, the composite supply of providing the healthcare along with medicine, that will be categorized or classified with the supply. With which supply? With the supply of that principal supply, which is a healthcare service. And we all know healthcare service is exempt. So the entire composite supply will be eligible for the exemption. The entire composite supply will be eligible for the exemption. Is that point clear to all of you students? Every one of you are clear with this proposition? This is what this concept of composite and mixed supply is all about. I hope that all of you are clear with this thing. And with that particular proposition, students, we now go to this particular question which has been there over here. So now let's quickly run through these questions which are being there with us. Now, in this regard, students, please have a look. Question number 4 is an MCQ. Point number 4. Mrs. Jolly Electronics Private Limited is an authorized dealer of Mrs. DG Micro Limited, located and registered in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. It has sold the following items to Mr. Allah Rakha, consumer. Product is the refrigerator 500 liters, taxable at 18%. 500 liters, which is taxable, students, at the rate of 18%. 40,000. Stabilizer for refrigerator, taxable at 12%. 5,000. LED television 42-inch, taxable at 12%. 30,000. Split AC, taxable at 35. Stabilizer for AC 5,000 separately. Messrs. Jolly Electronics Limited has given a single invoice indicating the price of each item separately to Mr. Allah Rakha. Mr. Allah Rakha has given a single check of rupees 1 lakh for all the items as a composite discounted price. State the type of supply and the tax rate applicable on the same students. Now obviously, students, herein you have gone to the shop, and in the shop you have selected 5 items. When you select 5 items, only one particular invoice is what is made. Do you think that, like, go to this big bazaar or any of this Vijay's sales shop, these are the departmental stores, Now you are purchasing some 7 to 8 items in that context. What happens in this regard? For 7 to 8 items, does he make a different invoice? DMart is the example, other example. Does he make a separate invoice for every particular goods that you have purchased? Does he make separate invoice? No. Just analyze the bill. So what will happen is this, that he will take a total, he will take a list of everything, and then towards the end, because you have purchased 5 items, he will give a discount at that point of time. Say discount of say 10%, because you have purchased 10 items with him. Now with the discount of 10% that he is he giving a discount to a single item or to each individual item that you have purchased? What exactly that consolidated discount means? Is it given to a single item or to each of the item that you purchased? That obviously implies that this 10% discount which you find it on the subtotal he gives a discount, that essentially is for each item that you've purchased. And that being the case, now you tell me finally that is it a case of a composite supply, or is it a case of a mixed supply, or it is none of the two? Is it a case of a composite supply, or is it a case of a mixed supply, or it is none of the two? Quickly tell me. Is it a case of a composite or a mix, or none of the two? That, students, in this context herein, it is what? It is none of the two. Why? There is no bundling. Students, there is no bundling. How do you know that there is a bundling, students? Bundling would imply that all the bundle that you have made, whether it is naturally bundled of a taxable supply, which one of the item is principal, or it is a case of a mixed supply, the bundle that you have done, that bundle should have a single price. The bundle that you have made, students, that bundle should have a single price. This is the identity of a bundle. And now in this context, tell me, is this particular, they have given you the list over here, do we have a single price of everything together? The answer is no. All these items, in fact, in the question itself, I have not highlighted deliberately, because if I would have done it, you would have answered it that time itself. In this case, if you see, indicating price of each item separately to the customer. And when the customer, so each, how much is this for? This is for this. How much is this for? This is for this. How much is this for? This is for this. Each item, the price has been indicated to the customer separately. So therefore, there was no bundling which was being done so far as the supplier is concerned. This is the reason why it is neither a case of a composite supply nor it is a case of a mixed supply. And hence, each item will be charged to GST at their respective rate. Each item will be charged to GST at their respective rate. Is that point clear to all of you students now? That exactly is the point. So I hope that all the things are clear to all of you students in this regard. That exactly is the game. Now comes the real danger part, wherein now you have to write. This is where you fear a lot. Up till now, conceptually, you are clear. Yes, you are clear. If I ask you any question, will you answer? Yes, you will answer. Now, can you write and reason out the answer? Your reason would be there, but only 50 to 60%. You will still be percent or 40% or 30% far to provide the exact reason which can fetch you full marks, even if your answer is fully correct. But the reasons is not appropriate so as to land up to get you the full marks. Right, to that particular, where the struggle. This is where is a painful job. Up till now, you were entertained with all the logics, with all the reasons. You were feeling so good about it. Now we are entering to a painful exercise, which nobody wants to do and nobody has done it till now. That is where the time has come to really accelerate our performance and to accelerate our. I want all of you now, students, to read this first question and just see. You would do know the answer, but I'm now not interested to get the final answer. What I'm more interested is the manner in which you are going to arrive at the answer. That is more important. If you see over here, first question, Satyamev Printers is a printing house registered under GST. It receives an order for printing 5,000 copies of a book on yoga and meditation authored by a well-known yoga guru. So what is the job that he got? He got a job of printing of 5,000 copies of a book. That is a job that he got, like a job book. The content of the book is to be provided by the yoga guru, Satyamev Print. Content would be provided by the publisher. It is agreed that Satyamev Printer will use his own paper to print the said books. Just like us, like the book which I publish also from Bharat Law House. What I do is this, that I provide the content. Then Bharat Law does what? They print that particular book. In that case, obviously the paper that they are going to use would be their own paper. And then they do the printing activity. You are required to determine the rate of GST. However, there is more to that content. Just let's find my discussion. You are required to determine the rate of GST applicable on supply of printed book by Satyamev Printer, assuming that rate of GST applicable on services 8%, whereas the rate of GST applicable on supply of goods is 12%. Now, please understand one thing over here. There is a content which I have received from the recipient of the supply, who happens to be, in this case, a yoga guru in this context. So the yoga guru is providing me the content. I, being a printer, I'm using the goods, which is the paper, as well as I'm performing a job, that is service of printing in that particular book, in that particular paper, and that finally translates into a fire supply, which I am providing it to the recipient. This is the yoga guru. So what I have provided to him in this case? Did I provide him goods, which is the paper, or did I provide him a service, which is the service of printing? What did I provide to him is what we need to answer. Obviously, this boils down to concept of the composite supply or the mixed supply, and on that you need to develop the answer, students. So now, students, how you are going to unfold the answer, students, in this context? First thing, as you know, this is a case of a composite, in this case, supply, which I think all of you are aware of the fact that here it's a case of a composite supply. Obviously, now, will the printer, will he charge a single price on this entire item, or will he charge for paper separately and for printing separately, or will it be single price that will be charged? Single price that will be charged. Unlike in the previous MCQ, wherein the price was indicated separately, here there will not be a separate price for paper that he will provide to the supplier. At printing, he will not provide separate price. It will be a single price. And that is what comes within the ambit of section number 8 now. Step number 1, check out if the composite supply is applicable or not. And if not, then go to step 2, which is the case of mixed supply. We do know the answer that, sir, it is composite supply. And finally, the answer would be, it is a printing service. It's a printing service, isn't it? How do you write it? And what do you write it? That is a game, ultimately, as far as these kind of questions are concerned. So first and foremost, students, is about the fact in this context. So in this situation, students, over here, the first and the foremost, students, is about you need to define what is composite supply. For sure. What is composite supply you need to define. And once the composite supply is identified, thereafter, so this is a definition and classification. Definition and classification is the key in this case. This has to be your first point in this regard. And the second point, students, would then be that of the analysis and conclusion. Definition and classification of what, students? Of the composite supply. Of the composite supply. So how do you define it now, students? Obviously, definition means you need to hit section number 2. of the composite supply. So there are clause as well. Ignore the clause. Just write as per section 2. Defines what? Now students, this is one of the easier method. Defines the composite supply. Now this is how you can remember it. Sentence students, or the equation which I have framed for all of you. Question which I have framed for all of you. That can be used, or may I put it in a more refined manner? Composite supply would mean what? Aishwarya? In this case, supply of supply which consists of students, two or more taxable supply. This is a game. Taxable supply of goods or services. This is what is the one of the part of the equation. So two or more, in this case, of the taxable supply of goods or service, or both, as the case may be. Goods or service, or both, as the case may be. And what is the next one, students? Which are naturally bundled. That is the second part of our equation. Which are naturally bundled in this case. And is it in the supplied in the ordinary course of business? That is the third part of the equation. Supplied in the ordinary course of business, because that is how it is naturally bundled. No? How it is naturally bundled in the ordinary. You can make this as one of the point, or ensure to, I'm splitting this so that you remember it. Don't miss out. So which are naturally bundled. How do you say it is naturally bundled? Because they are supplied in the ordinary course of business. They are supplied in the ordinary course of business, and in that one has to be a principal supply. One has to be of the principal supply. One of which is a principal supply. One of which is a principal supply. This is what you need to write properly. And you cannot afford to goof up. Once it has been defined, in this context, students, as per section 8A, now the classification comes. As per section 8A, the first clause of the composite supply. Composite supply shall be treated as a supply of what? Of the principal supply. So therefore, composite supply, students, in this case, the composite supply shall be treated as what? This is the classification. This point is that of classification. In this context, composite supply shall be treated as a supply of such principal supply. This is what it is. Classification. So definition and classification. Definition and classification is what ultimately you have to write. Is that point clear to all of you? Can you write it thrown in this context? Now, this is an optional thing. This is an optional thing. Ram, this is an optional thing. Now, what is optional? That you may or you may not write. There is also a definition of principal supply, students. What is principal supply? But this you may or you may not write, depending upon the marks, students. This is optional depending upon marks. You can skip this depending upon marks, students, that it carries. If it is for 2 marks, please ignore it. So only that much is sufficient, and then conclusion based on what is the question that they have addressed. But this provision has to be there. Definition and classification. Optional depending upon the marks. That is principal supply. So, but if it is a 4 to 5 marks, then might be you will have to write what constitutes as a principal supply. So principal supply is what, students? What constitutes principal supply in this context? And in fact, I'm telling you, don't shy away. If you cannot write the sentence properly, in this case, you can write in this particular format also. I've seen one of my student, Anand Bang, scoring 88 in IDT, and what he did was he made this sort of a presentation in the answer, in the exam. And the reason was very clear. His English was not that perfect. And he was a rank holder, 25th rank, All India. This was one of the presentations that he, in fact, ended up doing it. So, wherever he felt that he may not be in a position to write the sentence properly, he indulged into this sort of a presentation. I am doing this presentation for 2 reasons. Number 1, if you think that you are also not in a position to write the sentence appropriately, you can use at least on the definition part, this sort of a presentation, or why this presentation I'm doing it, so that you remember the essential element of the definition. Essential element of the definition needs to be remembered. You cannot skip on this. Now, depending upon the mark students, principal supply can be referred. And as I told you, what is principal supply? Ishwarya? Supply of goods or service, goods or service, which constitute what? Predominant, which constitute the predominant element in the composite supply. And what about the other one? Other supply? Other supply forms part of the other supply is merely ancillary to that, is merely ancillary in the composite supply. So you can write to which the other supply. What is other supply, students? Other supply forms an ancillary part to the composite. So the final thing, what is it is predominant, but while defining this, you are also putting it the ancillary part reference also, so as to establish that what is predominant is the principal supply, but you are making a reference. How do you establish that it is predominant? By also making a reference that the other supply is merely ancillary to the composite supply, so that the predominant becomes the principal supply. Is that point clear to all of you students? Again, I'm repeating, this is optional depending upon the marks that the question will carry. 2 to 3 marks, no need to write it. Simply put the composite supply and the classification is what you need to answer it, and then finally come to the case study and conclude it. So therefore, students, now obviously the conclusion part, you are very better off in this context. All of you did the conclusion part quite well. So I need not primarily. Do you want the conclusion part over here? Let me do the conclusion in this context herein. So over here, students, composite supply in the present case. Now present case. See students here in present case. Composite supply. What is composite supply over here? What is composite supply, students, over here? Identify the composite supply. This plus this. Printing service plus what? Plus paper used in printing. And therefore, what is predominant over here? In this case, classification. So principal supply. What is the principal supply? In this case is principal supply. In this case is printing service. Supply of printing service. And therefore, composite supply would be classified as printing service attracting what? The GST rate. What was the GST rate, friends, in this case? What was the GST rate? Whatever it be, attracting a GST rate. GST rate of what, friends? You can just write. So whatever is there in the question for printing service, for the supply of service, students. So you do 18%. That exactly. This is how you will write it. See the analysis. Composite supply. What is composite supply in the given question? You need to identify that. Printing service plus paper used in printing. That is a composite supply. In that, what is the principal supply? Supply of printing service. Therefore, the composite supply would be classified as printing service attracting the GST rate of. Okay. If the question is for say 5 to 6 marks, which I doubt it will be, but say for example, if the question is for 5 to 6 marks, then you will have to expand this in your analysis. Expand this in your analysis. If it is for 5 to 6 marks, 5 marks, say for example, you say, sir, how do we expand this one? You have to, I tell you, na, I tell us that this is the naturally bundle providing printing service on the paper of the job worker or the printer is a composite supply since what? Since it is naturally bundled. Since it is naturally bundled of a taxable supply and uh, naturally bundled in the course of business of a taxable supply on which the principal item happens to be the supply of service. The principal supply happens to be the one of the item has to be principal. No? The principal item happens to be the supply of service, printing service. Then accordingly what? Accordingly, the principal supply being supply of service, supply of printing service would be the basis of classification of such composite supply attracting the rate of GST at 8. That would be a bit of elaboration, but that may not be required if the question or the marks that it will carry would be of 2 or 3 marks. Is that point clear to all of you? Every one of you students are clear with this one? So the strategy has to be very clear, friends, in this kind of a scenario because these are the kind of a case studies which are being there. On the composite supply, ICI of late is interested in the MCQ part of it. But this case study we cannot rule out because they do know very clearly that the students struggle to write the answers properly, even if they do know the final answer. Even if they do know the final answer. Is that point clear to all of you, students? With that, students, let's move on further quickly now in this context. See, that is the reason why, students, for me, revising the things becomes equally critical rather than only doing this Q&A. Because if I do only the Q&A particular part of it and your concepts are not that clear, then it is gone or everything would be wasted. This topic, especially this topic and couple of more, require that level of bit of patience for us to really handle this one. Now, these are the small set of questions. You can only write the provision and move on. Good evening. Sudama Associate, a registered supplier, disposes the computer owned by the business without consideration. Disposes the computer owned by business, so it's a business asset without consideration, and it has not claimed input tax credit on such computer. Examine whether the disposal of computer by Sudama Associate qualifies as deemed supply under Schedule 1 of CGST Act 2017. So what do you need to do in this regard? So you will have to do what? This case, just put the provision first. What is the provision? Provision happens to be permanent disposal of a business asset on which IT has been claimed on such qualifies as supply under section 7(1)(c) Redway Schedule 1. Okay, just introduce without consideration. I forgot without consideration. So permanent transfer or disposal of a business asset without consideration on which ITC has been taken on such asset qualifies as a supply under section 7(1)(c) read with schedule number 1. Now that already, students, I have developed the equation for you. So that is the equation that you can put forth. So once you have written the provision, now you just put across the explanation. In the above case, what is it? In the above case, since no ITC has been taken primarily, therefore, such permanent transfer of a business asset, even if it is without consideration, will not be considered as supply under 7(1)(c) since no ITC has been taken of such business asset. That is it. But the point which I am emphasizing to all of you over here is that when the first paragraph has to be has to be the provision itself, the relevant provision itself. You just cannot beat around. There are too many provisions. You need to be hitting that relevant provision very clearly and then conclude through your analysis. Let's move on to the next one. Shivaji Private Limited, a registered supplier, supplies the following goods and services for construction of building and complexes. So he is supplying what, students? The goods and services for construction of building and complexes, excavators for required period at per hour rate for excavation on the land. That is point number one. So you do the excavation on the land first, isn't it? That is first thing. Man, now you know there is a typical machine through which the excavation is done of the soil on which the construction would be carried out. Now that particular, you can say that machine or the crane, whatever you want to name that, or excavators, that there is a person who will operate that particular crane. Now you cannot say, you give me that crane or the excavator, my person will sit on that and he will do the excavation. That person, the supplier, will know how you will operate it. He will operate in such a rough manner that the excavator will get damaged. And that is the reason why, students, you will know that the manpower are always supplied to operate that excavator. Now, if the manpower is always supplied to operate that excavator, can we therefore say they are naturally bundled in the ordinary course of business? Naturally bundle of what? Of taxable supply, of goods or services, or both. And one of the two has to be the principal supply. Now, what is the principle in that? Renting of excavator or giving the manpower? What happens to the principal supply in this case? The principal supply in this case happens to be the renting of excavator. And that is the reason why this composite supply, if in this case which has been provided, will attract the rate of GST which is applicable to the service of providing the excavators on rent. Service of providing the excavators on rent. That is what would be the rate of GST applicable in the context of this composite supply. Soil testing and seismic evaluation at a per sample rate. So this is the first step. The soil testing is done, that whether this soil is capable enough for undertaking the construction. Now that is a separate activity altogether. Nothing to do with the excavation. Excavation would happen subsequently. So this is a separate identified activity, and therefore in this context, therefore this cannot be considered to be a case of a bundling. You cannot bundle this with the excavation. And if an attempt is sought to be made to bundle this, then might be one can argue that it is a mixed supply. If somebody is saying that no, for all the three, I will charge one consideration, all the three, then might be that somebody can argue it's a case of a mixed supply. Because this soil testing is not something which is naturally bundled in the ordinary course of business. But providing excavator on rent along with the manpower, yes, you can say that it is a case of a naturally bundle. Now the excavators are invariably hired out along with the operator. So obviously, students, this they already have told. In this case, this is a case of a naturally bundled, or this is a case of a composite supply. So they already in the question itself they are telling you that this is a case of a composite supply. Similarly, excavators operators are supplied only when excavators is hired out. Now, excavator, obviously, this technically tells you that this is a case of a composite supply. This entire 2 or 3 lines, which they are giving it to you, technically tells you what? That this is a case of a composite supply. Now, for a given month, the receipts exclusive of GST of Shivaji Private Limited, who has given this supply, are as follows. Higher charges for excavators, 18 lakhs. Service charges for supply of manpower for operation of excavators is 20,000. Now, the fact that these two are something which is naturally bundled, one cannot be, although the price is split, please be careful over here. In this case, can I get only the service charges? Although he has given you a two particular amount, but can I only get a service charges without getting the excavators, or vice versa? Can that happen? Answer is no. So they are naturally bundled? Yes. So in the composite supply, even if in the question they give you a case of a split pricing, don't get confused. It has to be considered as a case of a composite supply, and therefore the classification would be made accordingly, and accordingly the classification would be with that of the principal supply, which we know is the case of the hire of or rent of the excavators. This is one thing that you should always bear it in mind. Next particular point, service charges for soil testing and seismic. This is separate, which is 2,50,000. Compute the GST payable by Shivaji. Hiring of excavators 12%. Now this is the question is about computer. It is in this case you will have to compute. So please only compute, for which your main answer has to be a statement. Now how do you compute this particular context? This is the format, which is the ICR format itself, and this is appropriate. There cannot be much better in this context. So just put across hiring charges 18 lakhs, 12% and 2 lakh 60. Service charges for manpower only for this and the next one 20,000, 12% in this. And the service charge of soil testing, for these two only the note is required. See, for hiring charges of excavator, no notes are required in your main answer. Why? Because obviously it is 12%. Why there has to be any note? But for service charges for supply of manpower, why I'm taking 12%, whereas they have given that 18% is the rate of GST applicable for supply of manpower service. So why I'm taking 12%, that note needs to be written. Now for that you just define composite supply in this context and then conclude that in this context the principal supply happens to be that of the hiring of the excavators, and that is how the composite supply would be classified, and accordingly the rate of GST would be made applicable even to supply of manpower, which is the operator, which is at the rate of 12%. Now in this question, students, this 18% will require a note. Be careful, this is where you will miss upon. Why? You will say that, look, this was composite, this is something independent. You will have to write in the note, and in the note what the ICI should see, that this is an independent to the above composite supply. Just in a simple sentence you will write and wrap up. This is independent to the above composite supply, and therefore the rate of GST would be charged separately to such supply, and accordingly the applicable rate of GST happens to be 18%. Is that clear? This is what they need to see in your answer, that look boss, this is independent to the above composite supply, and accordingly the applicable rate to such supply would be made applicable. That is how the answer has been dealt. Is that point clear to all of you? If you don't write this 18%, marks is gone. Do you require a note of first one? In the examination, you will write the note for the first one? No. No notes are required. Do you require the notes of this? Note is required for this. Note is required for this. Is that clear to all of you students? Every one of you. Let's move on to the next one, students. In this context, this one we already discussed while we were doing the concept of consideration. If you remember this particular case study, Mr. Kanjilal Adani is an oil exploration and production contractor and is registered under GST in the state of Gujarat. He entered into production sharing contract with government of Gujarat, wherein he gets a license to explore, exploit and sell the petroleum crude and a natural gas. From he gets a license from whom? From the government of Aliabet oil field, in lieu of royalty and a share of profit petroleum. Some petroleum has to be shared. In the month of June, Mr. Kanjilal Adani explored the petroleum reserves at Aliabet oil field. He got a portion of petroleum silt worth rupees 3 lakhs, the part of compensation. So for that period, Adani got 3 lakhs worth of petroleum silt. The form of what, students? In the form of his share in the PSC, production sharing contract. This petroleum silt is a part of cost petroleum as per the contract entered with the government. Examine the taxability of petroleum silt received by Mr. Kanjilal Adani under the GST. Remember this discussion we already did when we were discussing the concept of consideration over. And I told you students, what is to be written? Only two things. First and foremost. Students, this particular thing which is given is to compensate the cost of exploration. So what is the 2 points which I told you when we were discussing about this particular concept this in that lecture of consideration, where I told you about the fact that this is to compensate the cost of exploration, point number one. What was that point number two? Students, if you can recall that this, students, what I got family, can I say that it is a supply for my own self in this context? This activity he has done for whom? For his own self. Is what he wants. Now, at the end of the day, whatever is the things that he finds out through the exploration activity, bulk part of it belongs to me, and some part I give it to the government. That is what the PAC is all about. So if I get it for my activity, in this case, so I did the activity and I retained those which I explored. So in that case, it is as if that I am rewarding myself for the activity which I have done. And that is the reason why you cannot have a situation. This is the reason number two, that this particular activity was carried out for his own self. And therefore, there cannot be a case of a reward for his own activity. So therefore, this activity, he did it for whom? This activity, students, that he did was it for his own self. That is for themselves. And that is what, students, is the ultimate reason, students, that it will be there. The reason for the same is that the contractor carry exploration production petroleum for themselves and not as a service to the government. And hence, the portion of the petroleum silt that he retains is not in the form of a consideration, and hence it is not within the scope of supply under. It is not a scope of supply under section 7. Don't use the word subsidy, Aishwarya. The wrong choice of word. Be very careful. I gave you this two particular split in that discussion of consideration itself. This is the ultimate thing. So first is, what is this 3 lakhs worth of petroleum silt? This is nature of that 3 lakhs worth of petroleum silt. The nature is what? You will tell. It is nothing but a compensation towards the cost of exploration. Point number two. In this case, did he did this exploration for the government, or did he did the exploration for his own self? He did this exploration for his own self. And because he did this exploration for his own self, therefore it cannot be considered as supply for a consideration, and hence it's outside this. The 2 points that you need to establish in this particular question. What are 2 points? Repeat and please write. One is the nature of this particular nature of the share of petroleum silt. Why this is given? This is, or the purpose. Purpose. You can say the purpose. What is the purpose? Purpose is to compensate the cost of exploration. Point number two. This particular exploration was carried out for his own self and not for the government. That is second point, and that is how you're going to conclude so far as this particular point is concerned. So this is how, students, you will put across your answer in this context, and this is where the things are. My friend, this is very interesting. Again, the students will struggle to write the answer. Point number 5. Angad Private Limited is engaged in the business of distribution of construction material. As an incentive, Angad Private Limited pays an amount of rupees 75,000 to its employees upon achieving a specified sales target. The incentive is part of the salary of the employees, and applicable tax is deducted at source as per the relevant income tax provision. Angad Private Limited is of the view that GST is not leviable on such incentive paid to the employees. Whether the views taken by Angad Private Limited is it correct or not? Whenever such question is there, please be careful. Whether here you don't have to examine, you have to first whether this is correct or not. First line of your answer has to be correct, incorrect. Whether it is correct, incorrect, other word that they will use, tenable or not, tenable in law or not. Whenever they use this particular thing, see, these identify the kind of nature of questions. Huh? They ask you examine, previous question, compute, primary, discuss. So if the question is about examine, compute, discuss, you don't get the first line cannot be your line for the final answer. But if the question is about what? Tell me whether his view is correct or not. Or tell me whether his position is tenable in law or not. Tenable means acceptable in law or not, or correct in law or not. If that is what they feed as the final question, then your first line of your answer has to be yes, the view taken by Angad is correct in law, is correct in law, or incorrect in law as the case may be in this context. This has to be a first. Did you realize what I said right now? What kind of question should have the first line as the final answer? This type of question. Whether this is correct or incorrect, whether this is true or false, whether it is tenable in law or not. If this is the nature of the question, then your first line has to be directly bang on the target. Yes, it is correct. Yes, it is incorrect. But be careful. If you don't know the answer or if you're unsure of the answer, then please don't mess up. Your first line, you cannot give this position. You need to be diplomatic there. And what is the diplomacy? You will write primarily the way you want to write. Ensure that he goes for a sleep by the time he reaches to the last line where you have written your final answer. To make him sleep by writing that kind of an answer, he goes for a sleep and he doesn't read the last line. That's how primarily you move. That's a that's an art, isn't it? How you make the examiner fall in sleep for some of the questions you don't want him to read till the last. So therefore, if you're confident, first of all, the question demands that the first line has to be the answer. ICS suggested answer will have the same approach primarily. So you will also have to write this correct, incorrect, but with a condition that you are 100% sure what is this answer. Okay, if you are sure, you definitely will write. If you are 90% plus sure, also you will write this approach. You will use this approach. But you have 50-50 kind of a scenario, then first line you should not conclude. Conclude on the last line. Did you got this particular point which I just told you or not? Now, friends, here what you are going to say about it. See how intelligently these people are doing it. 75,000. Do you know why these people have given you 75,000? Just to confuse you about that 50,000 threshold. Remember that gift up to rupees 50,000 is not taxable. Gift given by whom? By the employer to the employee. And only in excess of 50,000 it becomes taxable. So this is what they want to feed you by giving you the value of 75,000. This is what they want to feed in your mind. So therefore you don't have to get confused. Here, students, the answer that you need to put across first and foremost in this context, what exactly it is. So herein, students, the analysis that you will put across would be what? Indeed. Tell me, does it fall under the Schedule 3 category or not? 7.2 read with Schedule 3. What is Schedule 3? You will put across this particular part. Schedule 3, you know. Service by whom? By employee. To employer. In the course of, or in the course of, or in the terms of employment. Terms of employment. Tell me then, what happens over here? This is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. Neither this nor that. This is Schedule 3. This is what you will have to say as per Schedule 3. Certain activities is neither considered be supply of goods or supply of service, in which one of the question is service given by the employee to the employer in the course or in the terms of his employment. Yes, Ram. That is point in this context. Herein, now you need to explore in this context. How you have to explore that in this case, question tell me in this regard. This particular part, getting an incentive is a part of the salary of the employees in this context. So this is a part of his salary. And to give this sales target is something which comes in the course or in the terms of his employee. And accordingly, it is it is a it falls within the ambit of Schedule 3. It falls within the ambit of Schedule 3, and hence it is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. At the same time, do ensure to put across your observation about that can it be considered as a gift as per Schedule number 1? Can it be considered as what? As a gift, students. Is it a gift in this case? Providing a sales incentive primarily to achieve the sales target cannot be considered as gift. One sentence needs to be put across. That providing sales incentive to achieve a sales target is not in the nature of gift. So this you need to put across also. With that sentence, providing sales incentive to achieve the sales target is not in the nature of gift, and then you conclude. Therefore, what? This is not a supply, and hence the view of the employee. Who is the employee? Mr. Angat in this case. So not Angat Private Limited. That GST is not leviable on such incentive is correct. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. This is what you need to put across in your answer. This is what the ICI, the examiner should see. Is that clear to all of you? Don't only confine yourself to this. Also discard the option. Please understand they have used 75,000 with some intention. I'm telling you that if they would not have given you the 75,000, they just would have given you, please be careful over here, how smart the ICA are. If they would not have given you this number of 75,000, they just would have given that he is getting a sales incentive to achieve the sales target. So therefore, he is getting a consideration to do something. So if he is getting a consideration to do something, it is not a gift. That is one thing everyone knows. So I need not write about gift if the value of 75,000 is not given to me in the question. So if they don't give me the value of 75,000 in the question, they simply write in the question that, look, boss, this is what it is. He is getting a sales incentive to achieve the sales target. Now you say whether the GST is leviable or not. Only Schedule 3 would be sufficient enough. The very fact that they are giving you 75,000, you need to write one sentence that achieving a, getting an incentive to achieve a sales target is not in the nature of gift, and hence will not be a supply under Schedule 1. Hence would not be a supply under Schedule 1. Is that point clear to all of you students? This is how the things would be looked upon in this particular case study, which has been given to you. Coming on this one, students, let's come to question number 6. Now, students, over here, this is 7.1a, read with schedule number 2. This we have not touched upon, but I assume that you may be aware of it. Or this also can be considered as a homework, students. 7.1a, read with schedule 2. Please do ensure to read this one. If you have not read it earlier, please do ensure to read 7.1a, read with schedule number 2. What is that 7.1a, read with schedule number 2? It is nothing but, students, about the case where whether this category of supply would it be considered as a supply of goods or it would be considered as supply of service. One of the two. Whether it would be considered as supply of goods or whether it would be considered supply of service. This is 7.1a, read with schedule number 3. So what I'm only suggesting to all of you students to do over here is this, that immediately after the lecture, just go through that 7.1a, read with this thing. So this case study is based on that. In that, students, one of the entry which has been given to you is about the fact that if I agree, students, if I am agreeing to an obligation, be careful. if I'm agreeing to an obligation to refrain from an act, if I agree to an obligation to refrain from an act against a consideration, means I'm receiving consideration for what? For not to act. Then, in that case, under 7.1a, read with Schedule 2, it is categorized as a supply of service. It is categorized as what? As a supply of service. So just, I would want all of you to just put across this particular, because this is what they frequently ask as an independent question. And many of the students doesn't write properly, and again, although they do know the final answer, but they don't get the full. So what exactly needs to be there, students, over here is schedule number 2, reference 7.1a, head with schedule number 2, about the classification. Classification as a service includes, so one of the entries what? Three things. In that entry, three things are there. Agreeing to an obligation, to refrain from act, to refrain from an act against a consideration. Against a consideration. That is it. Then just put across this particular provision in the case study that they have given to you. Get the answer. You get the answer, student. Is that point clear to all of you? Can we move on from further now? Okay. Let's move further, students. Students, with this, agreeing to an obligation to refrain from an act against a consideration is classified as a service under section 7.1a, read with schedule number 2. Classified as a service under section 7.1a, read with schedule number 2. If you are clear with this proposition, we will proceed further, students. I think now you can just read this particular case study, and there is no such thrill about it. Tell me one thing, students. Now, after going through all this particular session, do you find the gap which was there earlier and what is there right now after this? Just tell me accordingly, because that capacity of feedback would be an important one at this stage. So that is what would help me further explore or refine in terms of the output of the lecture. Can you clearly identify the gap, students, that was there earlier in this topic versus what it is there after this session? The inputs given to you in this session. Ashwara Tulsi. I'm specifically on the presentation part, students. Interlinking is fine, but more on the presentation part. That is the question which was there till the last lecture. Today's session is specifically on the presentation part. Let's look upon to this one, friends. Question number 7. Moksha Bhumi Industries has its manufacturing unit in the state of Maharashtra. It stores the finished goods manufactured by it at a depot located in the state of Gujarat. The depot is owned by Punya Bhumi Limited, a related person of Moksha Bhumi Industries. Punya Bhumi Limited has not charged any consideration from Moksha Bhumi Industries for usage of depot for storage purpose. whether the storage of goods permitted by Punyabhumi Limited to Mokshbhumi Industries qualifies as supply under. So students, what is exactly what you will say on this one, students? Simply put, students, what you need to write is that equation 7(1)(c). Now be careful, students, over here. You write the answer on this one. It is the language is very critical over here. Related person, you know, students, what happens in the case of that related person? First of all, supply of goods or service or both. Please ensure to use this word supply of goods or service or both by default. It will show that further refinement in your answer. Whenever you use the word supply, if it is only for supply of service, like for example, for import of service, we know it is only for service. But for all the remaining part, majoritarily we know it is for goods as well as for service. It is for goods as well as for services. In some case, it is only for goods. Like for example, business asset, only for goods. That particular context. So therefore, we are aware of it. But in the other cases, which is only supply, like 7(1)(a), use only supply. This 7(1)(c), which we are doing it right now between related person or between deemed distinct person, we know that there is no categorization that it is a supply of goods or supply of service. It could be for both. So therefore, when you write in your answer, please ensure further refinement by writing supply of goods or service or both. When you are 100% sure that it is hitting both, it is not exclusively either for goods or exclusively either for service. In such particular case, please ensure to write supply of goods or service or both. Now, the next sentence is between the related person. This I have already established earlier in my lectures. I'm repeating it again for the last time. Between the related person is what you need to put across very clearly. And the last one, students, goes without saying, without the consideration. Without the consideration. And what about in the course or furtherance of business, students? In the course or furtherance of business, I told you that 7(1)(c) essentially is in the course of business. 7(1)(b) may or may not be. So 7(1)(c) is in the course or furtherance of business. Or furtherance of business. Now that would be a supply under section 7(1)(c), read with Schedule 1. This is only for the related party, students, we are talking about it. This is only for the related party, students, that we are talking about it. Is that clear to all of you? This is only for related party, students, that we are talking about. Okay. So between the related person is the point that you will always try to put across carefully. Yes, Ram. Perfect. So therefore, this is the equation which I've developed. Please ensure to make the sentence in this context, and therefore, in this particular context. By the way, students, here in this case, what that Gujarat related party has given to us, is it a supply of goods or it is a supply of service? Is this a question which is on supply of goods or it is a supply of service? Now you identify through the question. In this case, here, if you see in this context, for usage of depot for storage purpose, has not charged any consideration, has not charged any consideration from this thing for this. Has not charged any consideration for this. For what? For what he has not charged any consideration? For usage of depot for storage purpose. So therefore, you will write categorically that the supply of service by Moksha Bhumi Industries in the nature of usage of depot for storage purpose without a consideration in the course or furtherance of its business to related person. Who's a related person? You can name it. To Punya Bhumi Limited being a related person. is not, is, sorry, is a supply under 7(1) C read with schedule number 1. Okay, so please identify this as a service in this context. So even these are the minute part that you miss upon. So please identify in this question, identify it is a service in this context. Identify it is a service. This is what will give you the marks. This is what will give you the marks. Extra mark, supply of service. So once you open up your answer by writing that it is a supply of goods or service or both, but then that's a provision that you've written, but then on the basis of the case study you are getting so specific that you are in a position to identify or classify that this particular question involves supply of service. You can extend further what is the nature of service, that is a plus that you can do, but do it in this way. That exactly is the point, friends. Question number 8 also, students, if you remember, we have dealt with it. Again, students, I'll just put across to all of you this particular question. Security lending, which we discussed earlier. So, Rob Shareholding Limited. Now, again, concept everyone knows, but again, the problem of this part of question is about how to write the answer in this. So, Rob Shareholding Limited, an approved intermediary, has entered into an agreement wherein certain securities were to be lent to Dhandhan Bank under SLS 1997. Dhandhan Bank shall pay specified lending fee against such lending of securities of it. Explain the taxability of transaction involved. Now, what is the transaction which is involved? Please understand, this is such a beautiful question. In the security lending scheme 1997, are you getting it what they have asked you? Did you realize what these people have done it? They are not asking you in this case, explain the taxability of the above transaction. First, they are giving you a brief note of what this security lending scheme is all about. And then they are asking you in the question, explain the taxability of transaction involved in transactions involved in the security lending scheme. Now, what are the transactions which are involved? Point number 1, there are 2 transactions which are involved. In this, if you see from the question, and many 99% of the students will write that this transaction is a supply and therefore it would be charged to GST. 99% answer would be this. You will not get full marks. Then you will wonder where the marks are getting deducted in this context. So now you need to be very careful. There are 2 transactions which are involved in SLS. Which are those 2 transactions? One, the very transaction itself of SLS. The very transaction itself of SLS wherein I am lending my security to get a fee from you for the period for which I am lending you my security. That is transaction number 1. And the second transaction, intermediary service. If there is any intermediary who has facilitated to undertake this transaction, who has facilitated this particular transaction for which he will also charge commission. Now, in that case, that particular consideration also will need to be discussed, whether it will be charged to GST or not. Therefore, there are 2 transactions which are involved, for which you will not get marks if you confine yourself only to a single transaction. You will not get full marks. What I am trying to say is that you won't get full marks. You read the question carefully. Read the question very carefully, friends. I hope that all of you are clear with the kind of the way you need to read the question. That is what exactly this session are all about. The way the things has to be looked upon. If for the very last time, students, we can just try to take a note of it because there is a CBSE circular which is also involved in this particular case. So first of all, friends, the caption or the short point of this question, students, herein, definition of goods and service you have to write. Exclude, definition of goods or security, exclude what? Exclude security. That is one thing which we know about it. Now we can directly hit, students, rather than beating around it, that CBIC circular, Central Board of Indirect Tax and Customs. CBIC through its circular, students. Through its circular. Clarified. What it is clarified? Clarify that. Now this you need to write it properly. And that is the reason why, students, I'm just putting it over here. What they've clarified. A transaction of securities which involves which involves disposal of security, transaction of security which involve disposal is not a supply. This is what you need to. Now the things are simple. What is that? Activity of lending of security, students. Tell me. Activity of lending of security is not equivalent to disposal of securities. And therefore, students, therefore what? Therefore it is equal to supply. Therefore it is equal to supply. And finally, therefore, lending fee is a consideration taxable under GST. One more thing, friends. What is that? Activities of intermediaries. Facilitating. Facilitating the lending of security transaction shall be taxable activities of intermediaries facilitating lending of security transaction shall be taxable. Is that point clear to every one of you? Just ensure to write these particular notes so that these are the tough areas or uncomfortable areas for many of the students in this. Now, with that, students, let's quickly wrap up this next two questions. In that case, before we wind up in this contest and the balance, students, tomorrow we'll wrap it up and then move on to the next topic. Students, now the other part also, although we know the answer, but again, that is a challenge for us. To write the answer is a different challenge altogether. This is about, students, question number 9. If we can just come to this question number 9 very quickly. 9 and 10. These are the two questions, students, that you just be very careful about it. 9 and 10. Krishna Dev, the trader based in India. Ramakrishna, brother of Krishna Dev, is located in China and is also engaged in business of trading of goods. Krishna Dev places an order with Ramakrishna for procurement of certain goods from local market in China. Obviously, somebody who's thinking about related person, it will not help because this is where the related person, that brother, is not dependent on Krishna Dev. So Krishna Dev places an order with Ramakrishna for procurement of certain goods from local market in China. Before the shipment of goods from China to India, Krishnadev sold such goods to Cristiano, a trader located in Brazil. A trader which is located in Brazil. The goods are, or the goods were subsequently shipped from China to Brazil. Comment on, comment on what? Comment on the taxability of transaction between Krishnadev and Cristiano under the GST in India. Taxability of transaction between whom? Krishnadev and Cristiano. Now this is, so tell me one thing. Are you going to write about Krishnadev and Ramakrishna? That related party transaction, are you going to write anything about that in this question? Please don't get that temptation to divert. Question is very specific. Then that is only talking about commenting on the transaction between whom to whom? Between Krishnadev to Cristiano. That is it. Don't write nonsense about that related party, although somebody can make an attempt, but that is not required over here. And therefore, this is a clear case of schedule number 3, which we all are aware. Schedule 3 students in this context. So, schedule number 3 students in this regard, which has been there, which is about what students? Sale of goods. How do you write about that? Sale of goods from whom to whom is important. Sale of goods from whom to whom. That is what you have to write. From a place. From a place in entity and students to another place in entity. So from this to this, plus there is one more thing students. From a place to entity to another place in entity, plus what? Plus there is one more thing. Without such goods entering will not be considered as a supply. So what is the final answer? This will not be considered as a supply. So if this combination is existing, sale of goods from a place in entity to another place in entity without such goods entering in India, this will not be considered as a supply. Is that clear to all of you? Every one of you? That exactly the point as far as this particular point is concerned. And if that is the case, students, we now move to this last question in this particular session. Mohandas International entered into a transaction for import of goods from a vendor located in Italy. Due to financial issues, Mohandas International was not in a situation to clear the goods upon the payment of import duty. Upon the payment of import duty, Mohandas International sold the goods to Radhakrishnan Export House by endorsement of title to the goods while the goods were in high sea. The agreement further provided that Mohandas International shall purchase back the goods in future from Radhakrishnan Export, because I had this issue now, I had the problem of funding. So I cannot clear the consignment because I don't have the money with me. So what I'm doing, I'm transferring the title without the clearing of the consignment. I'm transferring the title. Now that thing, I'm telling you that okay, but tomorrow in future I will purchase back the goods from you. So it means that the other person will clear that goods from for home consumption. And once it is cleared, then I will purchase the goods from him. So in this case, what you need to answer is discuss the taxability of transaction involved under the GST law. So which are the transaction in that case, students? Technically speaking, the three activities that you need to target. Point number one. The first one is that high C sale, about the fact that transfer of document of title without clearing the goods for home consumption. And that is not a supply as per schedule 3. That is point number one. Then you also need to write that now who is going to clear this goods, and then who is going to face the liability, because the liability would be of the custom duty as well as the IGST interstate. So Mohandas is the Radhakrishnan Export is the importer now, who is going to clear the goods for home consumption. So what Radhakrishnan will have to face, he will be liable for import duty at the time of clearance of the goods for home consumption plus IGST as applicable. And the third point, so the first one is about transfer of document of title from by Mohandas to Radhakrishnan is not a supply as per Schedule 3. Second point, when the goods are clear by Radhakrishnan export for home consumption, he will be liable for two things. One is the import duty, another is the IGST. And the third one, students, is about the fact that on subsequent sale, post the clearance of the goods for home consumption, on the subsequent sale after the goods are clear for home consumption, back to whom? To Mohandas International. This would be considered as a normal supply. And if it is considered as a normal supply, accordingly it will be charged to. Is that point clear to all of you? So please tell me, in this question, 3 points has to be there. So what is that you're going to write? How are you going to present your answer? Not the way it is given over here, but a presentation of your answer has to be supply from high C sale. That is the first point. Number 3 points is right. Point number 1, high C sales. I tell you, explain what is high C sales. I think every one of you can do it. Transfer document material before clearance for home consumption. Second would be Radhakrishnan clearing the goods for home consumption. That's activity number 2. That is point number 2. What is that you're going to speak about it in this point number 2? That he will be one who is going to face the incidence of import duty of customs as well as the IGST. And then third is the subsequent repurchase by Mohandas from Radhakrishnan. This is point number 3. That will be considered as a normal supply and accordingly will be charged to. Is that clear to all of you? Every one of you are clear? Split into 3 points. Don't look into the answer. Apply your mind. Simplify the answer and write all that is required in that thing. And you will find what I have told you is what has been written in this series of paragraphs. Why to unnecessarily complicate when you can simplify? And you can write all which we have discussed and which has been given in this ICI study material. I hope that all of you are clear with this one now. Question number 11, students, already I have discussed with all of you. We'll say, what is that question number 11? Remember, at ground floor was a shop and the first floor was what? Was at renting for residential. So what and a composite rent, only a single rent was charged. So it was a mixed supply. And because it was a mixed supply, we already gave our conclusion as to charge the GST at the rate applicable, highest rate applicable, which is obviously to what? To the renting of the commercial shop. So that already I have discussed. So I'm not discussing this particular point again. So up till question number 11, students, we have done it. And now, students, next session, part B of this Q&A on supply and the basic concept, I'll wrap up this chapter. Okay, I'll see you then, students, tomorrow. I hope that this was a very productive session for all of you. Would be an eye opener as to how you read the question, how you write the question, and what you write in your answer. With that, students, in this case, I'll see you in the next class tomorrow. Tomorrow's time, students, will be 9:50 as usual. So, no, in that particular case, the extension would be 9:15, the normal time. See you then, students, tomorrow, 9:15 tomorrow. Take care.